One day, I was just leaving school when my mom texted me to ask if I would mind picking up a few things from the grocery store for dinner. There was a grocery store right on the way home, so I didn't mind the extra stop. When I got to the store, I grabbed a cart and made my way around, trying to find the items on the list. This wasn't a grocery store I went to very often, so it was taking me much longer than usual. Once I had found everything I needed, I began to head to the front of the store to check out. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang and screaming. Someone on the other side of the store yelled, "Shooter! Shooter!" and complete chaos began erupting around the store. People were running around, carts were being shoved to the side, and things were being bumped off the shelves. I was frozen in fear, just standing there and taking in everything that was going on around me. Someone grabbed my arm and I turned to see that it was a male employee who was not much older than I was. He told me, "Back here," and guided me to the back of the store. We went through 2 sets of doors and into a room that was labeled employees only. I looked around the room to see lots of terrified-looking people who were crouched down, some of whom were crying or calling loved ones. The employee who had led me into the room locked the door behind us, and I went to sit on the wall that was furthest away from the door. There was lots of hushed chatter among those of us gathered there. Everyone was asking each other what they had seen. No one had a description of the shooter, and no one knew if anyone had been hurt. It was as if the shot had come from nowhere. An older woman who was sitting across from me was on the phone with 911, speaking in as quiet of a voice as she could. She was told that the police were on their way there and we just had to stay put where we were and remain as quiet as possible. We listened intently to hear what was going on out in the store, but there was only silence. My heart was thumping in my chest as I wondered what was going to happen to us. Would the police arrive in time? Where was the shooter now? I texted my mom to explain the situation and tell her I loved her, just in case something terrible happened to me. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door that caused several people to gasp. We all stayed as quiet as possible as we waited for whatever was coming next. The next thing we knew, one single bullet was fired through the wooden door. There were a lot of screams as everyone flattened themselves against the door. Thankfully, the bullet struck the wall and fell to the floor, not touching anyone. The next thing we heard were the screams of police outside commanding whoever the shooter was to drop their weapon. There were sounds of a struggle going on before at last there was silence. Police instructed us to open the door, which we did, and we were all escorted out of the store. We later found out on the news that the suspect was having some sort of mental health episode where he picked the store, seemingly by random, and began shooting. A cashier working behind the register was struck in the chest, but is expected to make a full recovery. I still jump anytime I'm at the store and hear a loud noise. When I was younger, I went to the grocery store with my mom. I remember exactly what I was wearing that day. A red dress with a bow in the back, one of my favorite dresses. The shopping trip started just like any other. My mom held her grocery list in one hand and pushed the cart with the other as we made our way through the store. It was midday, and there was a pretty good amount of people in the store. We were in the produce section, and my mom was looking through the avocados to see which ones were right. That was when I noticed him, an extremely buff man, maybe in his late 30s. He was standing nearby and was looking right at me. When I locked eyes with him, he looked away. But every time I glanced back at him, his eyes were focused back on me. He looked at me in a way no one had ever looked at me before. It was like an extreme sense of curiosity and focus. I thought it was odd that he had no shopping cart or basket items, and as time went on, he wasn't even carrying any items. My mom was too focused on her shopping to notice the man. As we made our way out of the produce section and into the cereal aisle, I lost sight of the man and figured he would just go about his business. Maybe I had just reminded him of someone else or something. Just when I thought we had lost him, I saw him in the aisle directly across from us. Again, he was staring right at us. When he noticed me looking at him, he quickly turned to his phone. I then leaned in close to my mom's ear and told her that there was a guy behind us that I thought was following us. But just as she turned to look to see who it was that I was talking about, the man ducked into the next aisle and was out of view. My mom just shrugged it off and told me that it was probably just my imagination and that I watched too many scary movies. I still had a bad gut feeling though. As we made our way to the next aisle, sure enough, I could see the man a short distance away, hiding behind a display while he stared directly at me. He quickly raised his phone and faced it towards me. I knew he was taking my picture, but I had no idea why. I was old enough to know that what he was doing was creepy, but not old enough to understand the many reasons why he might have been doing it. Knowing that my mom would probably shrug it off again, I didn't tell her what I had seen. The man continued on like that the rest of the shopping trip, following close behind us but staying a safe distance away that my mom didn't notice him. He snapped several more pictures of me before we were done shopping. At last, it was time to check out, and I felt so relieved. I was ready to get out of the store as fast as possible. But sure enough, the man got into line right behind us. He had no groceries with him, but grabbed a Powerade from the drink case nearby and laid it on the conveyor belt. Just as my mom had finished unloading her groceries, the man snapped another picture of me. This time, my mom noticed and was instantly on the defense. She asked him why he took my picture, but he denied ever doing so. The cashier overheard the conversation and ended up calling her manager, a tall, tough man, who offered to walk me and my mom out to the car. We got to the car safely, and the manager didn't leave until all of our groceries were packed and we were inside the vehicle. Nothing more ever came of it, but I still wonder what would have happened if the manager hadn't been with us in that parking lot. After picking me up from school one day, my mom had to stop at the grocery store to get some items for dinner that night. Usually, I would just wait in the car and listen to music when she shopped, but as it was getting close to Halloween and I wanted to see what costumes they were carrying, so I decided to go inside with her. We went our separate ways as soon as we walked in the door, and my mom told me to meet her up front in 30 minutes. I agreed before heading off to the Halloween section. I was pleasantly surprised by the selection and was trying to decide if I wanted to be a cowgirl or a princess when I heard a voice right next to me. I spun around and saw an older man standing there, smiling down at me. He asked me what my name was, and I hesitantly told him. He then picked up the princess gown I had been examining. He commented on what a nice dress it was and how pretty I would look wearing it for Halloween. I thanked him but felt uneasy. He glanced at the price tag, reading off how much the dress cost. I'll be honest, it was a pretty expensive dress. The man asked how I planned to pay for the dress, and I hesitated. I had been considering finding my mom and asking her if she would get it for me, but I knew what she would say. She would tell me that Halloween is only one day, and there was no point in spending so much on a dress that I would probably only wear once. The man must have sensed how conflicted I was, because he smiled at me, laughing a little. He then told me that he had so much money that he never even had to look at price tags. He told me he would buy me the dress and anything else that I wanted in the store. I was even more conflicted. On one hand, I wanted the dress, but on the other, I didn't know this man and had no idea why he wanted to buy this for me. I politely told him no thanks and turned to leave. But then the man grabbed my arm, holding me in place. He told me I didn't know what I was missing out on. I was feeling completely uncomfortable at this point, so I pulled myself free and ran throughout the store until I found my mom. I stuck right by my mom's side the whole rest of the time we were at the store. Luckily, she finished shopping pretty quickly and we went back to our car without any issue. It wasn't until we got home that I ended up telling my mom my experience in the Halloween aisle. She was very concerned and ended up calling the store and filing a police report. They never found the man who had approached me that day.